only a few things that I find absolutely unique to this quest, to this search.
Marty Lagina may be done with Oak Island, but what happened during the final dig of Season 13 could explain why. After more than a decade of digging, millions of dollars spent, and countless theories surrounding the legendary money pit, the team finally reached an anomaly deep beneath the garden shaft that appeared to defy everything they expected to find. Leaked reports allegedly point to something extraordinary at the bottom of the shaft, something that raised questions the team wasn't prepared to answer. And then came the claim that government officials became involved, turning an archaeological mystery into something far more unsettling. Was Marty Lagina's decision to walk away connected to what the team discovered underground? And what exactly was waiting more than 160 feet below the island? Before we uncover what happened, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this Oak Island mystery only gets stranger from here. This wasn't simply another failed excavation. According to the story surrounding the final dig, it may have been the discovery that changed everything and forced Marty to finally listen. This was the kind of discovery that had been building for 228 years. Rick Lagina could barely contain his excitement. For him, Oak Island had never been just another treasure hunt. It was a childhood obsession, a dream he had carried for decades, and now it seemed like he might finally be standing at the edge of its final chapter. Marty Lagina was much more reserved. As the engineer and businessman of the group, he had watched promising discoveries turn into nothing more than fragments of old timber, stones, and muddy water. He knew better than anyone that Oak Island had a way of creating excitement before delivering disappointment. But this time, even Marty couldn't dismiss what the data was showing. The readings were unusually convincing, and the evidence seemed stronger than anything they had encountered before. The history of the island made the moment even more significant. Before the Lagina's latest attempt, more than 56 people, companies, and organized groups had reportedly tried to solve the mystery, and failed. Some attempts had even ended tragically. Rick and Marty were determined that their expedition would not become another forgotten chapter in Oak Island's long history of unanswered questions. Then came the day everyone had been waiting for. The final excavation was surrounded by tension. Cameras had been positioned throughout the garden shaft, ready to record what could potentially become the biggest moment in the show's history. Nobody knew exactly what was waiting below, but everyone understood that the next few hours could change everything. The plan itself was straightforward. A massive caisson, a steel tube roughly 10 feet wide, would be pushed deep into the ground toward the suspected anomaly. Once in position, it would provide a protected route for a camera and eventually a diver to investigate whatever was down there. As the enormous drilling equipment came to life, the entire team gathered around the monitors inside the war room. The drill began chewing through layers of clay and rock, descending inch by inch, 100 feet, then 120. Every additional foot seemed to increase the pressure in the room. And then, at approximately 158 feet, something stopped the drill. It wasn't just another layer of rock. Whatever the drill had encountered resisted the machine with extraordinary force. The equipment groaned under the pressure. The drill screamed against the obstruction, and for a moment it appeared that the expensive machinery itself might fail. Marty immediately reacted. He got on the radio and instructed the operators to reduce the pressure. Rick wasn't ready to stop. With his face tense and pale, he urged the crew to keep going. After everything they had sacrificed to reach this point, this was the moment they had been waiting for. Then it happened. A sudden, violent crack rang across the island as the drill finally punched through the obstruction, and within seconds, the entire situation changed. A deep vibration rolled through the site, a strange, powerful hum that sounded unlike ordinary drilling equipment. It was low and resonant, almost like an enormous frequency moving through the ground. Then, the lights inside the war room flickered. The camera feed disappeared. The monitors suddenly filled with static. Confusion turned into panic as members of the crew began shouting and pointing toward the garden shaft. Something was happening beneath them. A faint blue glow had begun rising from the bottom of the shaft. It wasn't a normal reflection or the light from a piece of equipment. According to the account, the blue illumination appeared to pulse from deep underground, casting an eerie glow across the machinery surrounding the shaft. And somehow, the light was reportedly bright enough to remain visible even under the afternoon sun. For those watching, it was impossible to explain. But the strange light wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The island under attack. For nearly 30 seconds, the mysterious blue glow continued pulsing from the depths. Then, without warning, it disappeared. The strange humming stopped at almost exactly the same moment, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence. Nobody moved. For several seconds, the entire team simply stared at the shaft, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Rick was the first to react. He grabbed his radio and demanded that the camera system be restarted. Whatever they had broken through, he needed to see it. Marty reacted very differently. Instead of moving closer to the discovery, he began moving away. His face had reportedly gone completely pale. The excitement and confidence that had defined the dig were gone, replaced by something much more instinctive: fear. Marty wasn't approaching whatever they had uncovered. He was backing away from it. But what happened immediately afterward was even more shocking. According to the story, something occurred that never made it onto the broadcast. Before the production team could restore the cameras or recover the lost footage, several black, unmarked SUVs reportedly came racing across the causeway toward the money pit area. These weren't local police vehicles, and the people stepping out didn't look like curious officials. They were men in dark suits, moving quickly and with absolute purpose. Within moments, they had established a security perimeter around the garden shaft. One of the men, described as tall and expressionless, walked directly toward Rick and Marty. There was no lengthy explanation and no attempt to negotiate. He simply informed them that the site was now under federal jurisdiction and that their operation was finished. Then came the order that stunned everyone. All recordings from the previous hour were to be surrendered. The team couldn't understand how this was possible. The strange anomaly had been breached only minutes earlier. Yet these men appeared almost immediately, as though someone had known in advance that something was about to happen. Cameras were taken. Memory cards were removed. Crew members were pushed away from the money pit area. And according to the account, the message was unmistakable. This wasn't a casual request. The men were armed, and their behavior left little room for disagreement. For years, Oak Island had generated endless theories about what might actually be buried beneath its surface. Some believed the island could contain Templar treasure. Others imagined something far more extraordinary, an ancient religious artifact, forbidden knowledge, or even technology that shouldn't exist. Now, the sudden arrival of federal officials seemed to give those theories a disturbing new dimension. And this was the moment when the relationship between Rick and Marty began to fracture. Rick was clearly shaken, but beneath the fear was something else: excitement. To him, government intervention wasn't proof that they should stop. It was proof that they had finally found something important. "You see, Marty," Rick reportedly told him, "this is bigger than we ever imagined. They know what's down there." Marty couldn't see it that way. To him, a boundary had just been crossed. Whatever they had uncovered was no longer simply an archaeological mystery or a treasure hunt. The strange light, the unexplained sound, and the almost immediate appearance of government personnel had convinced him that they were dealing with something far more dangerous than a collapsed tunnel or a lost treasure. "This isn't a treasure hunt anymore, Rick," Marty reportedly replied. His voice was filled with anger and fear. "We're in way over our heads. We need to stop." For the first time in their long search, the brothers were standing on opposite sides of the same mystery, and the argument that followed wasn't captured for television. It happened privately, away from the cameras, the crew, and the officials surrounding the site. What looked like a disagreement over the next step was actually something much deeper. For more than a decade, Rick and Marty had approached Oak Island from completely different perspectives. Rick was the believer. He saw a responsibility to finish what generations of searchers had started. He believed they owed something to everyone who had sacrificed time, money, and even their lives trying to uncover the island's secret. Walking away now, when they might finally have the answer, was unthinkable to him. "We can't just leave," Rick argued. "This could be the answer we've been searching for all these years." But Marty had reached his limit. He couldn't forget the blue light. He couldn't ignore the strange vibration. And he certainly couldn't dismiss the men who had arrived almost instantly and taken control of the site. To Marty, all of it pointed toward a danger they didn't understand. He reminded Rick of one of Oak Island's oldest legends, the supposed curse claiming that 7 people must die before the island finally reveals its secret. "6 people are already gone, Rick," Marty reportedly said, his voice filled with emotion. "Do you really want one of us to become number 7? Or one of our sons?" And suddenly, the treasure didn't seem worth the price. Because Marty's sacrifice had never been limited to money. He had invested years of his life in the search. He had risked his finances, his professional reputation, and countless hours that could have been spent with his family, all because he believed in his brother's dream. But now, something had changed. Marty no longer believed they were controlling the investigation. He believed they had become pieces on a much larger board, and whatever game was being played around Oak Island, he wanted no part of it. Then Marty gave Rick an ultimatum. There would be no compromise. Either they shut down the operation, surrender everything requested by the authorities, and walk away from Oak Island for good, or Marty would leave on his own. Rick was devastated. He looked at the brother who had stood beside him through years of setbacks, failed excavations, disappointments, and impossible theories. Yet in that moment, Marty seemed like a completely different person. Rick couldn't understand how his brother could walk away now, just when they appeared to be closer to the truth than ever before. Years of frustration, exhaustion, fear, and pressure finally erupted. The argument became impossible to continue, and then came the decision that would reportedly change everything. Marty Lagina looked at his brother, his eyes filled with emotion, and finally said the words Rick never wanted to hear. "I'm done, Rick." His final words were barely audible. "I'm resigning from the company, the show, all of it. Oak Island is your obsession. Just don't let it become the end of our family." And with that, Marty Lagina reportedly walked away. He left behind his brother, the investigation, and the dream they had pursued together for so many years. For fans, Marty's resignation was the last thing anyone expected. The official explanation from the production company was deliberately vague. It referred to personal reasons and Marty's desire to concentrate on other business interests. But for the millions of viewers who had followed the brothers through years of discoveries and disappointments, that explanation wasn't enough. Something had happened during season 13, and whatever it was, it appeared to have changed everything. The aftermath was surrounded by silence and secrecy. According to the story, government personnel remained on Oak Island while the Money Pit area was placed under extraordinary security. The same location that had once been filled with drilling equipment, cameras, researchers, and treasure hunters was now eerily quiet. Access was reportedly restricted, with nobody allowed near the area without authorization. So where does that leave the Oak Island search? Rick Lagina now faces a completely different future. He has reportedly avoided interviews and remained largely silent. People close to the project claim that he was devastated by his brother's departure, but at the same time, more determined than ever to uncover the truth. The problem is that continuing without Marty would be a completely different challenge. Marty wasn't simply another member of the team. He provided financial support, engineering expertise, and a practical voice that often balanced Rick's enthusiasm. And now that voice was gone. But there's an even bigger question. Will Rick even be permitted to continue? Because once government authorities take control of a site, getting that control back may not be as simple as asking for permission. And this is where the story becomes even more interesting. Because after everything that happened, some people began asking whether Oak Island had been heading toward this moment all along. Was the television production simply providing a privately funded way to excavate the island while allowing authorities to observe what the team discovered? And if that theory sounds extreme, consider the island itself. Oak Island's unusual geology has fascinated researchers for generations. Beneath the surface lies a complex mixture of clay, stone, water, and natural formations unlike anything surrounding it. So what if the legendary treasure isn't treasure at all? For years, the dominant theories centered on the Knights Templar and the possibility that their lost riches had somehow ended up on Oak Island. But now, the speculation has evolved. Some theories suggest the real prize wasn't gold or jewels. It may have been information, ancient texts, religious records, genealogical documents, something capable of challenging accepted versions of history, something important enough that someone went to extraordinary lengths to hide it. And yet even that theory may not explain the strangest claims surrounding the final excavation, because another possibility has begun circulating. What if the team didn't discover a vault? What if they discovered something completely different? A vessel, something ancient, something that had been deliberately placed underground and forgotten for centuries. Suddenly, the reported blue glow and strange low-frequency vibration take on an entirely different meaning. Could they have been nothing more than equipment failure and natural geological activity? Absolutely. But what if they weren't? What if the drilling accidentally disturbed something that had remained dormant beneath the island for centuries? A dormant power source, an ancient mechanism, or something that no one was prepared to find. At that point, Oak Island would no longer be a simple mystery about who buried treasure beneath the ground. The question would become far more disturbing. What exactly was buried there? And why? And perhaps the most intriguing part of the entire story isn't something the team discovered, it's what disappeared. Marty Lagina was the man who helped finance the dream, supported his brother's determination, and repeatedly brought logic and engineering into a world filled with theories and speculation. Yet when the stakes supposedly became too dangerous, he walked away. And that raises one final question. Did Marty simply become tired of the search? Or did he see something that convinced him the truth wasn't worth the risk? His departure can be interpreted in many ways, but if there really was something beneath Oak Island that frightened him enough to abandon a dream he had spent years pursuing, then perhaps his resignation wasn't the end of the mystery. Perhaps it was a warning, because some secrets may be worth discovering, and some doors may have been buried for a reason. Oak Island has already cost millions of dollars, consumed decades of people's lives, and now, according to this story, it may have cost two brothers their shared dream. So the question remains, was the truth beneath Oak Island ultimately worth the price? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you want to follow this mystery as the story continues to unfold, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more updates.